And we are live. Okay, there is a countdown. And we're
There's
live.
always a countdown.
Welcome to A Nice Place to Brew. I'm Jason.
George?
Polly.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Today is Thursday, March 11th. We do the webcast every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a podcast under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew. It's available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all the places you get your podcast from. All of our past webcasts are available on our YouTube page. If you search for A Nice Place to Brew, find our channel and look at all of our past episodes. And we have a website, www.niceplacetobrew, and social media links at Nice Place to Brew and A Nice Place to Brew. Hope everybody's having a great week. Let's start off with the important stuff. What is everybody drinking tonight?
Polly, you want to go first?
You're on mute, Polly.
Hit to unmute, buddy.
Mute.
Sorry, here we are.
There you go.
So this is my the Pink Boot Society beer that Jason helped us brew with all the ladies down here at Brew 66. Turned out really good. I wish I would have let the carbonation go a tad bit longer, but it'll acclimate itself in the kegs. And then what I got right here, because all your assholes that got me 6 likes last week, you got one of the 5 milkshake beers right here. This is by what I'm calling Fine here, my milkshake bullshit beer, and my first flavor is Amaretti's strawberry lemonade infusion. And when I tried this the other day, or yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was like, oh my God. There's no way in hell I could hate on this fucking beer at all.
I'm saying they're not that bad.
Oh yeah, they are. They really are. But so yeah, this is really good. I got it, like when we were talking with the Midwest guys, they were asking about Amaretti. Yeah, if anybody ever wants flavoring, Amaretti is where it is. That's my shameless plug for the day. Your pro tip for the fellow viewers.
Okay.
Oh God, it doesn't taste like a 7.2% beer either.
Oh, promo code Polly at checkout. Okay, there's more than just one.
Oh wow, when did I get a promo code? I'm
Tonight,
I feel
apparently.
honored.
Well, if you're gonna, be schlepping for the guys over at Amaretti, I figured.
Right? That would be funny if we got it happen all of a sudden, like, yeah, promo code Polly. But everything I've had from them has actually been knocking out of the park. Them guys are doing good things over there.
Nice.
Although
Good.
it takes forever to get a shipment, and it came almost 2 weeks for it, but I got it.
All right. So for
Quicker
me
than-
tonight, I
Go ahead.
have 7 Arrows Keeper of Shadows. A bit of a repeat for me, a bit of a rarity, but it's pretty tasty. And it's 7%, 45 IBU Black IPA. Comes out like that, real nice head
Nice.
retention, nice legs on the head. So it's definitely got a little bit more hoppiness to it than I'm used to, but it is it's quite tasty. What about
How's
yourself,
the-
Jason? Oh, go ahead, Polly.
How's the hop characteristic? Is it piney? Did it say what hops they use by chance?
Let me see if it does or not.
I mean, do you got your traditional danky piney stuff, or is it?
It's not
fruity?
danky. It's almost. It is piney, but it's got a little bit of fruitiness to it too. So it doesn't have that just dank bitterness. But it definitely has some piney, vegetative type flavors to it.
Okay.
So yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Oh,
Now, Jason, what are you drinking? Is that a homebrew bottle of something?
homebrew. I would say mystery beer, but it's not quite a mystery beer
Okay.
because it was clearly labeled. And this is my cream ale, which I enjoyed for most of last summer. And just happened to find one last bottle at the bottom of my fridge. And I was like, why not?
Well, here's where we find out if Jason's sanitation holds up.
It's still pretty clean.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
it's the carbonation is definitely dissipated, but yeah, the flavor of this is very closely what I remember it being.
All right. Well, good.
Remembering this recipe too, because this was my corn recipe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you did use
It
corn.
was a partial corn.
That's what I use my cream ale as corn too.
Okay.
And have you ever had the Wildcat down here?
No, I have not.
It's their cream ale, which
Okay.
I don't drink cream ale, so I don't know how it tastes.
Okay.
I just brewed it today. I'm gonna brew it again tomorrow. Doing
Oh,
two
really?
turns tomorrow. Yeah.
It's a turn batch. Okay.
And so, Jason, we don't have to rip on Blickman because my replacement pump finally showed up this morning during the brew day.
Nice.
They made it in time. Okay.
Yeah. Although I
Good
did
job,
have,
Blickman.
yeah, good job, Blickman. To a point. Don't say. Well, George, you didn't hear the story. Like my pump last week. I don't know if I told it last week when it was last Wednesday, brew day.
Yeah,
doing Imperial Stout. Pump
You
went out.
mentioned that it crapped out. Yeah.
And so it came on Friday. It showed up right when I was leaving for lunch. Like, because usually I like to go to Chicago Street for lunch on Fridays with a few of the regulars. And so it showed up, and then I opened it up. I'm looking at it, and then I was like, I was trying to rebuild it real quick and install it, and I didn't have an Allen key to get the magnet off the shaft. So I was like, all right, I'll just come back and deal with it next day and come into work. So I came in on Sunday morning. It was going to be a quick early day, but probably be here for like 3 or 4 hours. And I get it all put together. And all of a sudden I look at the plug. It was a European plug for 240 volt.
Oh no.
It was misboxed. So Jason showed up that morning or that afternoon down here at the brewery to help me out with some flavoring of some beers. And I'm like, Jason, look at this. He's like, yep. I'm like, I've never seen this ever in my life. And it was Sunday, so I can't even call it bitch at Blickman on a Sunday afternoon. I had to let it stew for a whole 24 hours before they heard it from me.
Oh man, poor Polly.
But they came
whatever.
Yeah,
They
that's
did.
Good.
They
That's
did.
Good. That's good.
Although
Well
I
done,
do
Blickman.
have two. I had 3 empty tanks at the start of the day. I got one full one half full one. By next week, I'll have 4 full tanks again. By next week's show, I'll have four full tanks again. Back to full status.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Oh, Jason, did you see the picture? The text I sent, the PDF I sent you with the new label. Check
hold
your
on.
check your text messages.
Did this just come in?
I sent it to you a couple days ago. I tried to send it to all 3 of us, but I think for some reason, because it was a PDF, for some reason it's not sharing with Android people because I couldn't send it to my owners because she has an Android.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
All right, I'll resend it. I'll resend it right now.
Okay.
You guys talk amongst yourself for a second.
All right. So,
Are you working on anything homebrew related this week, George?
I kind of sort of am because last week I talked to you guys about a saison I'm planning on putting in cinnamon, and I was talking with the guys down at the brewery today, and they just brewed a saison which came out quite well. It down to 1003, so it's like super dry, and they were considering putting lavender in it, but they're concerned about doing it at scale because they have to do a minimum of 3 barrels. So I was saying to them, I'm going to have my system back up and running here shortly. Why don't I do a 5-gallon pilot? Try to incorporate some lavender into a saison recipe and see how it turns out. And, we can scale it up and then tweak the lavender percentage from there, however much we want to do. So I guess opening it to you guys and to anybody listening, if you've brewed with lavender before or have any insight into that, how much should I use? It's not one that I'm familiar with.
That's actually a great thing because me and Jason just figured that out today or this weekend. So I'd say what you do is do what we're going to be doing down here, especially with all the pink boots beers and with my milkshakes. And George, I just emailed you the PDF file of it, so it's on its way. We what we did is with the pink boots beer, because the flavor that they chose was huckleberry. So what we did was we took 250 milliliters of beer, uncarbonated and all that, and then we slowly but surely added a little bit more at a time until we found the sweet spot, and then you do clickety click math, and then all of a sudden you get everything you need for 5 gallons.
And I thought about that. The only trouble with that, Polly, is when you're adding like huckleberry juice to it to get that ratio, you can do that rather quickly. But when I'm talking about lavender, I almost have to treat it like a tea and steep it.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm not sure that it would be, because it's a flower. It's like floral in nature. So I would probably put it in towards the end or in the whirlpool of the of my recipe to kind of like steep it. But I don't know how to do that in a scenario like what you're talking about.
Is there a way you could maybe cold brew with it?
Oh,
Like
that's true.
I've been doing my coffee beers. Like I just do a cold brew where I'll just weigh out my amount that I want. Mm-hmm. I'll rack right on top of it. 24 hours later, you pull the hops or you pull the coffee bag and you serve it. And I've given that to a few home brewers, and they said it turned out really good. So that's an option you might want to try or think about.
Can I ask a real newbie question related to that coffee?
Yeah.
How do you go in and grab the coffee bag when it's done?
I just open it up and reach my hand in there and grab the motherfucker and put it in a hole and put it in a bucket.
But it's a
Jason,
keg full of beer, though.
Right. So what a lot of people will do is when they seal the keg, they'll have like a fishing line almost tied to the muslin bag, so that and seal that in the lid. And since it's not under carbonation, it doesn't need to be a perfect seal. And then when you open it up, just pull the line and you can pull the bag out along with it.
Okay.
And to be perfectly honest with you, that bag doesn't sink to the bottom because I don't put any weight in there. So when I pull that lid, the bag is floating at the top of the beer.
Okay, so, all right.
That's
so
true. Coffee is
you're
pretty
not going
buoyant.
shoulder deep into a keg. Okay.
Yeah.
No. I mean, my glove only comes up to here. It doesn't come up to here on me, so. No.
Wow.
But all right,
that
guys.
does put it into perspective. So thank you.
No problem. I hate to cut you short, but I have to go. I gotta go to the birthday party. All right, peace out, guys. I'll talk to you next week.
Later on.
Have a good one.
All right, bye.
You know, Polly brings up a good point, and I didn't think about it before, but a straight saison with no added spices or adjuncts or anything, is a pretty mild flavor. Like, you get that spiciness and whatnot, but I wonder if I could basically make a tea, a lavender tea, and see how much I need to actually get a decent amount of lavender flavor, and then maybe add just a half an ounce more or whatever, just like 10% more, and then do that for the beer. I bet that would work.
We got a comment.
Okay.
Aaron Silber, thank you so much for chiming in. Planning a green tea beer this weekend. Instead of fumbling with tea in the boil or a dry hop, I'm making a tea in the correct temp and adding it right to the keg at the end.
Okay, that's a thought. And that's what a lot of people do with like the cold brew coffee, is they'll make it separately and then add it into the beer. So that's a possibility as well. Yeah, you got to take that into account when you're talking about, because depending on how much liquid you add, though, you're going to potentially affect the ABV of the beer. So I gotta take that into account as well.
You would have to do a ratio analysis to find out exactly how much volume you should be adding.
Right. Yeah. Or take my final gravity after I add the
right.
After I add that in and mix it up.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
The tea is such a mild flavor, and lavender, just by its own nature, is a light flavor also.
It is, which is why I'm afraid that I'm going to have to add a bunch to get any lavender flavor out of a 5-gallon batch. And then once you scale that up to 3 barrels, are you adding a whole like yards full of lavender into the beer? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a flavor I've played with before, so be interesting to check out.
Yeah. I think a Saison is a good choice to try a lavender flavor with.
I was thinking either that or like, even something lighter like a Pilsner or
Or a cream ale.
cream ale. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
So, will we be seeing this on a George brew system near us soon?
Hopefully, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So,
All right. I was hoping that Paulie would be around for this, but he's elsewhere tonight, so
Okay.
he's gonna have to watch back the episode and hear this.
yeah, you owe me a story.
I do. I owe everybody a story, and this is going to take at least a few minutes because I'm going to tell every detail of it, and we'll see how much I regret sharing this story by the time I'm done. Because I did one of the dumbest things I have ever done with my homebrewing equipment this past week, and as I lead into this story, this is not a homebrew specific disaster story. It's a craft beer related disaster story, but it involves my homebrewing equipment, more specifically my fermentation chamber. So, all right, let's start from the beginning. So, last weekend, I visited a brewery that I am a big fan of, and that is Microphone Brewing Company in Elk Grove Village, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the northwest suburbs near O'Hare Airport. It is a very, very sought after, very well respected brewery for very good reason. The beer is excellent and people come from all around. It's very, very popular here in the greater Chicagoland area. So I went there, and knowing that I have friends that are big fans of this brewery as well, I walked out with quite a bit of product. And they, of course, have a nice long list of to-go cans. So there was a lot to choose from. I spent a lot of money. I'm not going to say right away how much I spent, but it was not a little. I spent a lot of money on said to-go beers. And got in my car, drove home, and with the expectation that I would put it directly into a fridge and just would take them to visit friends and drink them over the course of however long they would stay around. So one thing that I need to mention about this is in my fermentation chamber, which is not usually a beer storage area, but I do not have any beer that's in any kind of development right now. The fermentation chamber is empty, and it was the most suitable place for the volume of beer that I came home with from Microphone.
Okay, so I figured this out. Your craft beer disaster is that you have nothing going on to the point where you have nothing in your fermentation chamber. You have like one keg in your keezer and nothing brewing. So you're just like that's it, right? You're just feel so bad that you've done we've got a craft brewing show and there's no craft brewing going on, right? Like that's
wow. I'm getting called out here, and for good reason. Yes, you are correct. Yes,
I have no room to talk, by the way, but yes.
I do have one keg with homebrew here at the house. I have some scattered bottles, this being one of them, and a fermentation chamber that's just not doing anything. And, I don't like to, crap on anybody who doesn't like to brew during the cold winter months here in the Midwest, but I'm one of those complaining people. I'm not a fan of freezing my ass off in my garage.
You got to front load like towards the end of fall, like
that's
just
true.
Fill everything up and have a couple in spare.
That's a very good point, and I should plan for that in the fall time next year. That I have enough in reserve to last me throughout that time. That is an excellent idea.
Yeah. So anyway, your fermentation chamber is now full of Microphone beer.
Yes, exactly. So one of the other attributes about my fermentation chamber is you have to account for not only cooling temperatures, you have to account for heat. especially when you're brewing in the cold months, which many people do. And I have a small little space heater, which I keep in the garage as a heating source for those months where I need to not decrease temperature, I need to increase temperature, which, let's face it, here in the Midwest, half the year, that's what you have to do. And as long as you plug it into, a temperature controller such as an Inkbird, which George and I use and are big fans of, it works out just fine because the Inkbird functions as a switch. And as soon as you meet your target temperature, it's going to shut it directly off. No problem. Okay. Fast forward to where I was at. The space heater was still in the fridge, and I made the decision not to take it out for no other reason other than just happened to be where it gets the usage at, so it just stayed there. I also don't keep the fridge always plugged into the temperature controller. I just leave it unplugged unless I'm using it because it's a very, very old unit. And for the fridge to be running at a constant rate would just drive up my electric bill to insane levels. Okay. So it pretty much just sits there, until the times that I need it. It's fine. So anyways, I put beer into the fermentation chamber, put a plug into the cooling piece of the temperature controller, and I walked away. This was probably right in the evening time. I just spent the entire night in the house, just doing my thing, not even thinking about anything. Woke up the next day, just ate breakfast, drank coffee, like nothing was going on. And I was preparing to go hiking for the first time in 2021 because the weather here in the Midwest is growing nicely. So it was a good weekend for it. So I was heading outside of the garage in preparation not to open a beer, but at least just to, just kind of to throw some stuff in the car and get ready to go. And I looked out of the corner of my eye at the temperature controller, which of course was recording the temperature of the fermentation chamber. 190 degrees was the temperature in my fermentation chamber because
No.
I plugged in the heater to the cooling portion of my temperature controller, which is only trying to detect low temperatures. So if the temperature in the chamber is not low enough, what that's telling the controller is to continue sending energy into whatever unit that is. Mm-hmm. So the heater was running full blast in my fermentation chamber for roughly about a day. And fortunately, I opened the chamber before any of the cans exploded. The cans did later explode after I just tried to grab one. But believe me, I mean, the cans were just bent to crap, and all I could do is just take them upstairs, open each can, which made a giant mess of my kitchen, and I had to dispose of a lot of money's worth of very good beer.
Oh, yeah. That is the worst.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Oh, man. So,
I am all kinds of embarrassed about this on so many levels. Number one, because I mean, for many reasons, and I can't even put them in an appropriate order. But I mean, the obvious one is needing to dispose of that volume of good beer is not fun at all.
Yeah,
it's very disheartening. Second of all, it raises questions in my head like, am I really just too stupid and too irresponsible to be brewing beer over an open flame in my garage of all places? Am I not competent enough to be doing this? Like, should I just cash in my chips and just be done just because I personally am just too dumb to handle it? These are the kinds of things that I have to think about after going through this.
No, I'm gonna go on record here as saying that that's not it. I will say, however, labeling your plugs might not be the worst idea in the world.
No. I knew. No, that wasn't the issue. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I thought you meant the outlets.
Not the heating and cooling, but the actual, this one goes to the heater and this one goes to the fridge. You know? They might look different, but if you're,
That's a good call. Yes.
Yeah.
That could have saved the day in this case. Yeah.
Oh man, that is the worst.
Yeah. But honestly, I do think about this. This could have been way worse, because if this would have gone any longer, there's a good chance I could have set fire to my house. There's a very good chance.
Well, and I was wondering because if you're running that heater, I was surprised that there wasn't a temperature cutoff in the heater itself that would prevent it from getting that hot.
That is a good point. I did not think of that, but no, there was not.
Yeah,
It was.
you want to look
it was
into a
just
different
running,
heater.
just churning. Yeah,
So wow, okay,
yeah. So that's that.
that's
So I
that.
guess that is one bright point in this is I did not set fire to my house.
Yes, that is a bright point. Yeah. Oh man.
So George, I think your point about labeling the plugs, I think, is a good one.
It's just it's just a thought. So.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So that's that. A rough week, and I didn't even try to brew anything.
Yeah. No, and I've had those similar things where I just done something so stupid, and then I think to myself, what it was I thinking? What did I do? And so, actually, the guy we're gonna have on next week, he's an associate brewer over at the brewery where I frequent. Just recently had a burn scenario on his fingers that.
Really?
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about brewing safety a little bit
Okay.
next week.
All right.
And I
Let's
told him
save that
about
story for next week. I'm sure it's a
yeah,
good
I
one.
told him about the time that I also burned myself quite a bit with
the ankle.
on the ankle with some malfunctioning equipment. Yeah, so
That wasn't
it's
so much malfunctioning as it was just misuse.
well, it broke. The line broke.
Did it?
Oh yeah, and that's
Okay.
why
Okay.
it got too hot. It wasn't hot and cold, like it wasn't heat resistant line, and eventually just the hot and cold of using it as a immersion.
Okay.
It eventually just burst.
Okay.
And
okay.
yeah, so it was a little bit of equipment malfunction, but it did raise the specter of we should inspect our equipment more often. So.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right. I'll look forward to it.
Yeah. Brewing's a contact sport.
It clearly is. Yes.
Yeah.
So, another thing that happened this week, a past guest of A Nice Place to Brew webcast is Brian, the owner of Unpossible Mead in Dwight, Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
So I consulted with Brian about this mead batch that I just still cannot figure out because I can't get a fermentation going. So Brian answered every question I had. Brian was very knowledgeable, and his advice to me was that I'm under pitching for the volume and gravity that I have.
Okay.
So he said, you need to bolster your pitch. And fortunately, I have plenty of yeast here at the house. So I rehydrated, repitched 2 nights ago, and waiting for it to take off.
Okay.
Nothing.
Might be still be in a growth cycle. Yeah.
It could be, and that's okay. That's
Okay.
okay. If I can just start to get that activity, I will feel satisfied, and we're on to the next thing.
On that same note, I was talking with somebody about it, and they said when you're doing the yeast, or if you're doing a hard seltzer or something like that, where you don't have a lot of the added nutrients and everything that brewing beer creates, that adding in yeast nutrient can give it those amino acids and everything that it really needs to be effective. So if you have any yeast nutrient for your wine making or anything,
I do.
you may want to add some of that to it as well, and that could help the yeast, help bolster the yeast.
So I did have yeast nutrient and yeast energizer on hand, and I added it to the liquid right before I did the initial pitch.
Okay.
I don't know how significant this is, but I did read several articles that talked about the addition of yeast nutrient and energizer into fermentation.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically introduce it not at the point that yeast starts fermenting, but at the point that it starts lagging and backing off.
Oh,
So you
to
basically kind of get that
re-energize
one
it.
last burst of activity in the vessel.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean that's an interesting prospect, and I would gladly do that if that's going to get me to where I need to go. Sure.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
If you are a first-time viewer of A Nice Place to Brew, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We do our webcast every Thursday here. All of our past episodes are available on our YouTube channel. And tonight we are answering all of your home brewing questions. George is here. I'm here. Leave us a comment. We will answer it here for our audience, and we welcome your input. So thank you all ahead of time. All right.
Yeah.
What other things?
Well,
Have
I
you
was
read anything recently?
I've been reading about different homebrewing techniques and everything, and planning out my all the different things I want to do with my new setup, because I tend to over engineer things, as I'm sure anybody that's listened to the show in the past is aware of. A lot of what I've been reading lately has just been reinforcing some of the ideas that I have of how to handle the brewing process. In other words, just make sure everything is nice and clean. Make sure that you're using, consistent temperatures. You understand your temperatures and everything. So when my current plan when I'm building it up is either use copper or CPVC piping in order to pipe things around and into the different parts of the system. So I am wondering if and how many inline thermometers I want to include along with it in order to be able to understand the temperature drop at different regions. Or do I just want to be able to read it at outgoing in order to understand that? Because my concern is if I use either copper or CPVC, it's going to take a second for that to warm up if I'm using hot liquids in that. Okay. And I don't want to overheat my source liquid, and then as I pump it in, it doesn't get the same temperature drop into wherever it's going, the hot liquor tank or the mash tun or boil kettle or what have you. So
does Beersmith have a tool in the equipment profile section that can gauge this a little bit?
No, this isn't really a brewing question so much as it is a plumbing question. It's like when you're talking about, because think about when you turn on a hot water tap at the far side of a house that is, far away plumbing wise from the hot water tank. Takes a second for it to warm up. If you make an adjustment to the temperature, it takes a second for that to take effect, either for it to get cooler or for it to get warmer. And that's the kind of thing that I'm going to be working with / fighting against.
Yeah, no, I totally get this. This is effectively no different than strike water temperature to mash water temperature, and whatever your loss is when you add that water to grains.
Right. Yeah. The only problem is there's going to be a bit of a temperature gradient unless I can figure out, because initially there's going to be a decent temperature loss as the medium, the tube is warming up. But then once it warms up, it's going to be much less of a temperature loss. So then I'm wondering, do I try to solve this by insulating the tubing and preheating it by sending through water at a nominal temperature of like maybe 120, 130 degrees and preheating it before I do anything else? So that way I can, mitigate that temperature loss in the initial run.
Okay. That's an interesting thought. I'm not knocking it, but you may be making a bigger...
Yeah, that's the other part.
Is
I'm wondering if I'm just over-engineering
Listen, this would be a great question for Paulie because I know he would have a strong opinion about this.
Yeah.
I would guess, just knowing Paulie and just a little bit of his knowledge base that I've tapped into, I think that's where he would land.
Is that I'm over engineering?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think what you should do is you're going to have a certain degree loss. I mean, that's inevitable. I think you just need to identify that and just work within that. That's it.
Right.
Don't think of it as there's going to be different gaps and different temperatures and different locations. I think that's all just going to come out in the wash.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And if anybody's concerned about the use of CPVC in this, don't. CPVC is definitely rated for super high temperatures. It's used in culinary applications all the time. How we use it in our house, almost everybody does in modern usage at this point. So,
oh yeah, for sure. I don't think that's a concern at all.
Well, you say that, but when I built my Herm system and I put it out online for people because I was kind of proud of it. I was like, here's what I did for my Herm system. Yeah. A couple people came back and were like, well, why are you using CPVC? You're going to get, CPVC in your beer. And
what do they think? No. Did they think it was going to melt?
I don't know what they thought, but, then a whole bunch of other people that are, plumbers and whatnot chimed in and was like, no, you're being dumb. It's perfectly fine. So, and one person pointed out, it's like people will mash inside of a igloo cooler, but they're worried about some CPVC.
Oh yeah, so. Exactly. Yes. Perfect response.
Yeah. So if anybody was concerned about that, I just wanted to set your concerns to rest there.
Let's also not forget that there's such thing in the brewing process called a boil.
Oh yeah.
And crap tends to come out. Germs, bacteria, all that stuff gone.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So
absolutely.
There you go. Rest my case.
So yeah, I think I'm over engineering, which is not uncommon for me. But it's definitely something that I'm thinking about because I want to make sure as I build this that it's going to be that if I expect 125 degree water to come out, that's exactly what's coming out. And that's so yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
And a Saison brewing up at a brewery near you.
Soon enough, yeah. Yeah, and I tried their Saison that they brewed. It was just a straight Saison with no lavender. Turned out really well. So, yeah.
What should I brew?
What should you brew?
Yeah, I'm a little stuck on that.
So you like the darker beers, but we're going into spring.
Yes, we are.
So how much time do you have on your hands? Do you want to do a lager?
Yeah. Yeah, I could.
You could do a nice Helles, something a little bit on the hoppier side.
That's an interesting idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Or a Pilsner.
Yeah. Just something. The Pilsner a little bit more basic, but good lawnmower beer, if you will.
Yeah.
But I always, when I think about the two different styles, and you have your Pilsners, your Czech Pilsners are arguably different, Helles and Marzen and things. Helles stands out in my head for some reason. Usually has a ton of character, and it's a good, easy drinking beer.
It's very clean.
Mm-hmm.
Your comment about the character is interesting because I would categorize it very close to a Pilsner in the fact that it's a very just like white car type of beer. There's nothing hiding it. There's nothing disguised. The ABV is very low, so there's nothing there for the beer to hide behind.
So here's the thing: is you are correct, except in the guidelines for BJCP for Helles, you're looking at 8 to 12 IBUs.
Okay.
So, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about a Pilsner-like beer and 12 IBUs, you can get a bunch of hop character in that, and that you wouldn't get from a normal Pilsner.
What's the IBV use on a Pilsner?
Yeah, I just was thinking that myself. Let me look that up.
I mean, 8 to 12 is really low in terms of
It
the
is.
overall scale.
But again, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I have them totally backwards.
Okay.
Pilsner is, yeah. I do that sometimes with Helles and Pilsner. I have them totally backwards. Pilsner is the hoppy one, and it is 25 to 45. And Helles
Really?
is yeah. And so a true Pilsner is actually hoppier than what we're used to, because I think a lot of times when we hear Pilsner, our brain kind of goes to American lager instead of an actual Pilsner.
That is true. Yes.
And so, but an actual, German or Czech Pilsner, you're looking at a hoppier beer. So that's actually what I was thinking of, not the Helles. That's totally my fault. Yeah.
So the Helles has even less to hide behind than a Pilsner.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, a Pilsner, since now we're talking about the right thing, OG of 1044 to 1050, final gravity 1008 to 1013. So slightly sweeter to balance the IBUs.
That was Pilsner, right?
That's Pilsner. That's correct. Yeah. And so you're looking at 4.5 to 5%. So nice, easy drinking,
Yep.
but a ton of character.
Yeah. Helles.
Yep. I can go back to that. 1 second. So Helles, you're looking at 1028 to 1040 and 0.998 to 1008 final. So super, super dry. And so it's 2.8 to 4%. So that's
That is
definitely
so low.
so low.
Wow.
Yeah. It's almost difficult low.
That's like a kombucha.
Yeah.
Okay, not quite that, but okay, you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah. So, oh, wait, no. I'm sorry. That's an American light lager. What am I reading? Man, I am all over the place tonight. I am sorry.
German Helles.
Munich Helles. German Helles, Munich Helles.
Yeah.
1045 to 1051.
Okay.
1008 to 1012.
Okay.
And so 4.7 to 5.5.
Yeah, that's
16
more about what I thought it would be.
16 to 22 IBUs.
Okay.
So Pilsner picks up where Helles leaves off.
Right.
Yeah.
I certainly know. I mean, I know what a Helles is. I've certainly had them. I'm trying to think of the last Helles I had, and I'm drawing a complete blank.
They're not as common as you would
Right.
you find some other lagers.
I'm always reminded, and for those of you who have heard this story, just bear with me. It's worth repeating. I brewed a Baltic Porter at the end of last year. That's the beer that I still have here in kegs here at the house. Baltic Porter requires roughly about 750 billion yeast cells in order to complete the fermentation. It's a lager. It's a high gravity. There's a whole lot of yeast you need. So there's a couple different ways you could do that. And it was recommended to me from my local homebrew shop, the world famous Brew and Grow in Bolingbrook, Illinois. Promo code Jason at checkout. So you can spend a lot of money and buy 7 packets of yeast at your local homebrew shop, like the world famous Brew and Grow in Bolingbrook, Illinois. You can buy 1 packet of yeast and you can put a starter together and have that starter going for a good long time, because you're going to have to build to that 700,000 700,000 yeast cells you need. Or what other people do, which is an interesting idea, is they will plan a Helles brew day. They will brew up a Helles, they'll ferment it, they'll rack off the yeast cake, then they will have their Baltic Porter brew day, and they will rack on top of that leftover yeast cake from the Helles recipe.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because there's a whole bunch of leftover yeast that'll be there in that trube. There's a whole bunch of new sugars there, so yeast would just take off, once they detect those.
You'd have to do those pretty close together.
Yes, you would, probably back-to-back weekends.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe not. Well, no.
If you just left the yeast cake there, yeah, you'd have to do it pretty quick.
Yeah.
I mean, you could purge it with CO2 and seal the container, seal the carboy. But then you'd still have to do it pretty quick. So we do have a long question here. It's a pretty good one.
Before we get to that, let's just put a bow on this one. I almost guarantee the last Helles you drank was made by Kyle V. You're probably right, Sean. Cheers to you, buddy. Thank you so much for chiming in. All right, we got a home brewing question?
We do.
Okay. Sorry.
All right, go ahead. All right, so yeast chomping increases the temperature in the fermenter. As a home brewer, how worried should I be at fighting that temperature rise resulting from the yeast just being yeast?
This is a great question.
This is a great question. So the fermenter in the fridge at 65 degrees, internal temperature rises to 70 while the fridge stays at 65, then drops to 65 when the bulk of the fermentation is done. Always brewed like this and never gave it a second thought. Should I be trying to maintain a consistent temperature inside during those first initial few days? Jason, do you want to start off, or do you want me to start off?
Yes, I would be glad to. And Ryan, thank you so much for the question. The answer is not the one you're hoping for, unfortunately. They've done a lot of tests on this, and they estimate that there can be a temperature range of about 15 degrees from the neutral vessel temperature to what may be going on inside of the fermentation when it's at peak activity. So that unfortunately gives you a variable that you have to play around with. And the best way around this, honestly, is to get a vessel that you can dip a metal cylinder through a temperature probe into, and detect the temperature not of the neutral temperature around it, but inside the liquid itself.
Yeah. The closer you can get to the temperature of the liquid, either, and because I've got actually a rubber stopper with 2 holes drilled into it, and I've sealed a actual temperature probe into the one side, and the other side's for an airlock, so that it can. Okay, so Ryan has a tilt, so he knows the temperature inside there. It's kind of like the Play-Doh that's behind me here. So that's good. You know the internal temperature. So then the question becomes, how worried do you have to be about the temperature variance? If you're looking at a 5-degree variance and it's still within the temperature tolerance of that yeast, honestly, I wouldn't be too worried about it. The only time I'd be worried about it is if you were already at the high end of the temperature tolerance of that yeast and it was going beyond that. If it did that, then I would be worried about that. But that's part of the reason that when you get a yeast, you have a temperature range instead of a specific temperature you need to be at.
True.
So that especially initially when you get a lot of that activity and you see all that stuff swirling around inside your fermenter, all of that is going to create friction, is going to create temperature increases inside that liquid, and that's not the end of the world, again, so long as you're inside that temperature tolerance.
What is this icon that Sean has up here? It looks like tacos.
It's clapping.
It is clapping? Okay.
It's clapping. Or it's tacos. I'm good with it being tacos.
Am I wrong? Does that not look like tacos?
Well, let's show. Here. No, I'm pretty sure that's clapping.
I hope you're right. It sounded really good to me. Sean, if you agree, thank you very much. And Ryan, thank you so much for your question. That was a great one.
It was, yeah. And it is something that, especially when you start worrying about temperature, temperature control and everything inside of your beer, which is one of those things that we talk about a lot, is like being able to take it from good to great.
Exactly.
You can go overboard and you'd be like, oh crap, it moved a degree, and you don't have to be that rigid about it. It's just a matter of keeping it within those tolerances and making sure that you're getting the beer that you want out of it. And a lot of times keeping it within the yeast tolerance of that will do the trick.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and now Sean wants tacos, and honestly, who doesn't?
I always want tacos.
Yeah. So Sean actually also said that, or a very phenolic yeast, where like a Hefe, where you're trying to get more banana or clove. So, and I think where you're going with this, Sean, is that when you're at the higher range of a temperature tolerance for a more phenolic yeast like a Hefeweizen or some of the Belgian styles, you can drive some more of those characters like the banana or clove characters at the higher temperature tolerance. That is absolutely true. Certain yeasts are more variable in what they will produce based on the temperature that you have. And to compensate for that, if you don't want that in some of those, although a lot of times they are desirable, but if you don't want that, I've seen people start at the very low end of the temperature range, knowing that
it's going to grow.
That it's going to grow, that the fermentation is going to increase that temperature naturally.
You know what? That's a really good practice, actually.
It only goes one way. It's not going to get colder. So,
right.
If you are concerned about it and you don't want it to go above the temperature tolerance, then start out low.
Good call.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Bring on more homebrewing questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
We love them. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody who's joining us for the first time as well. I'll remind everybody again that our back catalog is available on our YouTube page under the name A Nice Place to Brew. And George and I also have an audio podcast under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew, that's available on the podcasting platforms. So we hope you check it out, and we hope to see you here in future episodes as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What else?
Oh man, let me think here. What else have I read about recently? Been reading a lot of different things.
Water, hops,
malt, yeast. So it was I was talking with the associate brewer down at the brew house, and he said to me, he's like, man, we made a Hefeweizen and we were done so quick. And it made me think about it, there are certain styles that are almost easier to brew. They don't take as much during the brew day because the yeast does a lot of the heavy lifting in order to add the character and make it really style specific. And a lot of those that I can think of are those maltier styles that you're looking for, those more phenolic characters like the banana, clove, and those kinds of esters in there. And so if you're looking for something that you want to be essentially not exactly autopilot, but you need something to kind of ease into, when you're talking about an extract kit or your first all grain brewing and stuff, I probably would suggest going more towards like a German or a Belgian style. What do you think, Jason? Am I crazy?
I think you're onto something, because there's definitely styles of beer that are more forgiving than others.
Yeah.
And the German or Belgian style, I would lean much more heavily towards Belgian. Mainly because if you do end up getting into the higher fermentation temperatures, you're adding certain characters that are still specific to the style. German beers are a different animal because you're getting more into lagers and the rules around that, which is not, kind of beginner homebrewer stuff.
True. I was thinking more of the German ales, like Hefeweizen, and wheat beers and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that.
Okay. We do have a couple other questions here. So Sean asked, besides fermentation temp, what do you think improved your home brew the most? I'm going to go out on a limb and say water chemistry.
It's a very good call.
Yeah. And water chemistry is one of those things that's kind of daunting. It literally is chemistry. But there's so many tools out there with Brew and Water, which is a free Excel spreadsheet. You have Beersmith, a brewer's friend, and things that can help you out with calculators and things in order to be able to create the right water chemistry for the different styles that you're brewing, because no water is perfect for every style of beer. It just doesn't exist. So
one other thing on that same note, water chemistry is a very good point, and it's one that's made manageable thanks to Beersmith and the Brew and Water calculator. If you just simply have an analysis of your water, then you can build water profiles for anything that you want to brew just based on your own local water. So there's no more buying spring water, distilled water, and then adding salts off of that. You just build off of what you have. It's a great, well worth jump for everybody to take. Here's another point. What improved your homebrew the most? I think it's realizing the fact that you don't need to go so far overboard with your recipes.
yeah.
Because I think people try too hard to get creative with their recipe building, when what would be of much greater use for them is to put all of that focus into getting good brewing technique and just brewing something with just a very specific end product in mind.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this, including your hops, including your yeast, including your water, including your malts. If you have more than 10 ingredients in your beer, dial it back. You did too much. What do you think? I mean, there's exceptions to that.
I
but...
agree with that. At least we would be calling out all of the milkshake IPA brewers out there. Sean being one of them. So I may be throwing myself under the bus here.
Okay. Yeah, when you get into all those adjuncts and everything, that might be a bit of an exception, but still. Okay, and then another question that came in from Ryan here is, what are your feelings regarding substituting two-row for Pilsner malt? Now, I guess the question that I have is, which direction are you going? Because two-row and Pilsner malt have two very different characters to it. In my mind, Pils malt is going to get you a much lighter character to the beer. It's going to get you usually a physically lighter color, and it's just when you're talking about body, mouthfeel, color, everything's going to be lighter when you're talking about a Pils malt versus a two-row. So the reason why I said what I said is because if you're brewing a Pilsner and you're substituting two-row, you're going to get characters like a slightly nutty character to it, a slightly darker beer, more body than you're looking for in a Pilsner. But if you're going the other way and you have like an ale that you are substituting in Pilsner, it's going to lighten everything up, which can sometimes, it's not going to be exactly to style, but can sometimes be a good thing and can really add a nice light body to the beer, depending on what you're going for.
Pilsner malt is the one with the DMS, right?
Yeah, well, there's that too. Yeah,
yes.
You're going to want to extend your boil.
Yep. So plan a 90-minute boil if you're using Pilsner malt.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Is that everything?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. Thank you so much for the questions, everybody.
Sean's saying that stouts and New England IPAs should be an exception to the 10 ingredient rule.
Okay, that's a fair argument.
I'll give him New England's, but I'm not sure I'm going to give him stouts.
Okay. There's a strong argument both ways on this because
Sure.
you've seen some really complicated stout recipes on cans.
Oh, for sure. In fact, I got one for Christmas that was like a kitchen sink stout that had every damn thing in it, and it was tasty. So when I say this, it's pretty much a general rule, and like any good general rule, there are exceptions to that. So, and now he's okay. Yeah. All right.
It was amazing. The peanut butter stout, it was amazing.
There are exceptions to every
Yeah.
rule, Sean. But
let me call out another one. I had the same reaction the first time I had Funky Mucker from Metal Monkey.
how many ingredients are in that, you think?
You know what? That's a great question. I will find out. It's not a little.
It's not.
It's not a little. Yeah.
Okay.
So, what else was I going to say about that? Okay. One other stout that I have waxed poetic about on this webcast on more than one occasion is the Gingerbread Stout from Hardywood.
Yes.
Do we know what kind of list that has?
I mean, we know off the top that it has ginger, Hawaiian ginger. It has like 3 or 4 different adjuncts to it.
It's got to have some kind of like biscuit malt or something that gives it that bready feel.
Yeah, I believe it does have like a biscuit malt and things. So, yeah, that might be. All right, I might have to give Sean stouts.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
We're winning
all
you
right.
over. Okay.
Yeah. I was thinking like straight stouts, but stouts are really, you wouldn't think so, but they're one that really lends themselves well to adjuncts and things. So I might have to give him stouts.
All right.
Begrudgingly, Sean, begrudgingly.
Well, let's close out on that note, shall we?
Yep. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We do the webcast every Thursday here on Facebook and on YouTube, wherever you're watching us. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you'll catch us on later episodes. All of our past episodes are available on our YouTube page under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew. We've done weekly episodes since the beginning of COVID-19, so there's a lot there. We have an audio podcast under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew, that's available on the podcasting platforms. We have a website under the name A Nice Place to Brew and social media links under A Nice Place to Brew and Nice Place to Brew. Thank you so much. We'll see you here next Thursday. And before we close out, we raise a glass one last time and we say, it takes a lot of good beer to make great beer. Cheers.
Cheers.